Welcome to the Disability Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team Disability.
Are you ready to push your limits, conquer the unknown, and actually train like an adventure racer?
This episode is sponsored by Nick Herf, elite athletic coach, seasoned adventure racer, and the go-to expert for building endurance, grit, and next-level performance.
Whether you're training for your first 5K, your next ultra, a multi-day expedition race, or recovering from an injury, like I am, Nick Herf offers personalized coaching plans that fit your goals, your schedule, and your life. With a deep background in real-world racing and a science-based approach, you'll get more than workouts, you'll get results.
It's not just about finishing, it's about thriving through every challenge. Remote coaching? Yep. Custom plans? Absolutely. Motivation and accountability? That's what he does best.
Check him out at nickherfcoaching.com and tell him we sent you.
That's NICKHURFF coaching.com.
I am here today with Joel Flory. In a minute, we're going to talk about nationals and some injury and recovery stuff. But I know everyone's probably anxious to hear the race rambles for both the nationals race and world. They are coming, and I will recover eventually. I mean, this has been, I think, the third or fourth episode about injury and recovery. So anyway, I just want to tell everybody that we will move on from this someday. And part of moving on is talking to a couple of racers that have recently completed nationals after an injury. And I spoke with Joel at nationals, and it was inspiring to me to hear what he's been through. So I thought it would be fun to share, and maybe he can give me some advice too. So welcome to the show, Joel. I guess first off, why don't you start with, a little bit about yourself and how you got into adventure racing, and where did it go from there?
Okay. Yeah, I will say I like your optimistic attitude of moving away from injury and recovery discussions in the future, but I feel like as we age, those may become a larger component, unfortunately, of the podcast scene. But so I myself live in northern Wisconsin with my wife and two kids, and we've been here for about 20 years. We moved here in '06 and have always been outdoorsy active people. But really, the adventure racing scene never came to the forefront until 3 years after we were here. I had a local friend who indicated that her and some friends were doing an adventure race and had done one previously. And so she invited me to participate with them. And knowing now that there's shorter races and there's a progression that a lot of people go through, it was a little different in that I did a 24-hour race the first time I went out.
Wow.
Um, and it was one of those experiences, I think, where people either love it or hate it kind of thing. Uh, and to me, I loved some parts of it. There were other parts, team dynamics are pretty important in adventure racing. That was not perfect. But that being said, the 24-hour race and format and difficulty just was right up my alley. It was something that I was really excited to do. And it doesn't mean that right after that race, I wasn't in physical therapy shortly thereafter either. Um, Part of it is lifestyle. I've been a field biologist or was a field biologist for 20 years. So I had orienteering and navigation skills. I had, some fitness, but I had young kids at the time and I was a stay-at-home dad for the most part. So I was not prepared for 24 hours of going at it. So, my first adventure race experience and injury recovery occurred at the same time.
Wow.
So,
And,
um,
perfection is a pretty lofty goal. I think you said.
yes,
I'm not sure any of us have had that perfect race yet. But
no.
anyway, go on. So what year was that you started racing?
So that was 2009. Um, and from that point forward, in 2010, 180 Adventure, who folks are probably familiar with, started the Stubborn Mule in Wisconsin in 2010. And it was an hour from where we live. It was in my hometown where I grew up. And it was like a no-brainer that we have to try this. And so in 2010, 11, 12, I probably did one or two adventure races a year is all. I would do a local one because it fit my schedule. It was convenient. And again, didn't put in a lot of pre-training effort. So, struggled a little bit, fitness wise and health wise. But I mean, we had a good time. And then it really wasn't until COVID era, as my kids were older, either off to college or out of the house. Um, and I didn't have a local team, that I started racing more and put in 8 or 9 races, I think in 2020, 21, somewhere in there.
Wow.
All solo because that was the easiest way to deal with COVID at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I've done 25 to 30 races over that time, but really the first 10 years were just one or two a year. That was about
Yeah.
it.
Wow.
So,
And
yeah.
so what would you say is your longest race?
30 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. The stubborn mules were originally 30 hours, so I did probably 5 or 6 of those. And then nationals in 21 and nationals this year were 30. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but I haven't gone beyond that yet. It's on the radar, and
Yeah.
the clock is ticking. So yeah.
Well, no one needs to go farther than that, but I would highly recommend it,
Hmm.
just once in your life, maybe do a 3 or 4 day race, see if you get
Absolutely.
hooked.
Yeah.
But 30-hour races, gosh, even 12, 10, they're a lot of fun. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't discount all of those races just because they weren't long, they weren't expedition races.
Oh
Sure,
yeah. Yeah.
you,
I feel the length in 30 hours for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I do too, and I think, the shorter the race, the more pushing you do. And I guess depending on the team you're with too. Like
Hmm.
depends on how much you push yourself and how much suffering you actually do given the time. But so for nationals this year, you were with a team. How did you guys join up and what was your team name?
Yeah, so I raced with 180 Adventure, and we had one of those kind of hyphenated names. It was 180 Adventure and Lone Paws. Um, and so I've known Paula and Julie for 15 years when they started the Stubborn Mule, um, and have raced their races. They put two of them on here in the state every year. So I've raced the majority of their races and never really reached out to other individuals looking to form a team other than locally for the most part. And Paul and Julie are very strong racers too. So I guess I wasn't confident that, you know how it is, you don't want to be the one person on the team that everybody needs to help kind of along.
Yeah, I know. I've
And
been there.
so I reached out to them at one, I was going to bring it up, and I think Paula actually mentioned it maybe right before I was going to mention it. Like, I think we'd both been thinking about it for several months or a year, just kind of been thinking about it, but never really brought it to the forefront. And they mentioned the possibility. And we were talking specifically about doing the Rib Mountain Adventure Challenge, which is another one of our local races, an 18-hour race. Um, and I think they had their sights set on doing nationals, but hadn't had a third person yet. And so it was kind of like, yeah, maybe we could do nationals, but let's get through this one first and see if we gel and work well together and so on. Um, but I think registrations were a little bit starting to fill up. And so I went and met them near where they live in the Cable Hayward area and did a 9-hour training day with them just to see if we worked well
Yeah.
together speed wise and thought process.
Yeah,
And
great
after
idea.
that, we decided, that, yeah, we could probably sign up for nationals, even though we hadn't really raced together yet, just trained. So,
Yeah, and they're the ones that put on nationals there in Wisconsin, right? Was that
and
2021?
one,
Wow,
2021. Yep. Yep.
that was a great race. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it
Maybe we
was. And
met back then. I don't know.
I don't know that we did. I was really kind of tied up during that race because I was racing with a couple from Japan,
Oh,
Hiroki and Fukiko, who were looking for a third person, to make a full team. And I was looking for, the opportunity to race nationals. So I joined with them, and they did not speak a lot of English at the time. So
wow.
it was a really challenging day. They're super great racers and a lot of fun, but it was,
Wow,
I
that
was,
sounds like a whole podcast itself.
yeah, yeah.
How
Uh,
cool.
so
Well,
that's how I ended up with 180 Adventure for this nationals race. Yeah.
yeah, and so as we were talking, you were telling me about, I think, a hip replacement and then a ruptured Achilles tendon. So just tell me, walk me back in time. What
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah. Well, age, I guess, age and sedentary lifestyle. I Well, yeah. So the hip replacement was not a traumatic incident. It was something I scheduled due to arthritic conditions, degenerative joint problems.
Yeah.
For 4 or 5 years, I'd been losing flexibility and got to the point where I was using a, 2 to 3 foot long shoehorn to put my shoes on in the morning. Couldn't cross my legs, all kinds of different things. Um, and so I was looking at scheduling a hip replacement for February of 2024. So that was a year and a half ago. So 2024 was kind of a bust. That was my recovery year, mostly. But so I had the hip replacement scheduled, and around here, February going into late spring gets to be mud season after the snow's bad. So I thought that was a good time to do it.
Yeah.
So had that scheduled. I had that done in February, and honestly, having been through a few other issues, shoulders, Achilles, whatever, I would take a hip replacement any day of the week. It's pretty quick and easy compared to what you were going through as well.
Yeah.
Within 6, 8 weeks, I was walking, and not only walking, but like hiking. I
Wow.
think I was on my bike again at 8 weeks. Now that was Zwift in the basement training.
Yeah.
Um, but I was spinning the wheels already and getting some bike miles in. And the fact that it was a planned surgery, I went into it in peak condition. Like I spent the winter using some Zwift training programs that were like 3 to 4 month training so that you peak for race day kind of thing. And my race day
Okay.
was the day I went into surgery.
Wow.
So
And so yeah, I'm always amazed when I hear people have hip replacements or also knee surgeries and they're weight bearing like immediately. Like,
right,
wow, that's that's
right.
got to be a game changer. And so
Yeah.
it sounds like that's definitely something you would do again. That was preventative and now you feel your hips are better.
Yes. Yeah. I
But
mean, it's,
then,
but then, yeah, so then I'm, back starting to move again. Doctor's really pleased with progress. I'm pleased with it. Everything seems good. And unfortunately, the year before, I'd taken up the sport of pickleball a little bit. That's job security for medical professionals right there, pickleball. Um, and so at 10, 11 weeks, doctor said, you're cleared on the hip, other than some stretching, range of motion things you should not do. You're good to do whatever you want. So I went out on a Saturday morning and went to play pickleball. And to be fair, I'd probably been pseudo sedentary for 10 plus weeks. And within 5 minutes, I pushed off kind of from the baseline and I dropped like a rock.
oh,
And I knew exactly what happened, even though it's never happened to me before. Felt like I got shot in the ankle.
wow.
All the old guys looking over me, like, just take some time, breathe. We'll figure out what happened. I'm like, yeah, I know what happened. And
Oh,
um, visited multiple medical locations that day to find out what to do. And basically, it came down to, yeah, it's ruptured. You're going to need surgery. And so my
wow.
hip recovery was waylaid at that point, and now I was on to the next thing. So
Oh gosh.
yeah,
And was that the same leg as your
no,
hip replacement, the other one?
it was the other one,
Yeah,
plus and minus. The downside is the one leg that I was using most, to balance the hip and to take some weight off it was now the one that I couldn't
right.
utilize anymore, which meant that my operative hip, my left hip, which had the hip replacement, now became fully weight bearing all the time when I was
Wow.
up.
So
So,
that almost sounds like, my nightmare. People keep saying, ease into it, you don't want to injure something while you're recovering.
right.
So I can't imagine how frustrated you were
Mhm.
and and you had to have surgery. What was the recovery like for that?
far more prolonged than the hip replacement, obviously.
Yeah.
It was a week to get into surgery. I think the separation was 37 millimeters on the tendon. So, it was wide open. They had to pull it back together.
Oof.
Um, it went in a cast. I think there was some time before, no, it went into a cast maybe right away. I was in that cast for probably 3 weeks. Ended up then in a cam boot. I mean, I had never used a medical assist device in my life, and in 2024, I used all of them.
Yeah.
Walker, cane, boot, crutches,
The works.
scooter. So the recovery was pretty long. I think it was 6 weeks before I was kind of given the green light to put a shoe on. It might have been even 8 or 10.
Yeah.
And even at that, the green light to put a shoe on didn't mean my foot would go in a shoe. It was
That
just too big, you know.
sounds pretty familiar to me.
Yep.
Yeah. I was
I
down
heard
in
you
a
mention
cast
in that
that long.
podcast, heard you mention that podcast with Nick about the swelling and the purple, the coloration and so on. That was many, many months and didn't mean I couldn't use it. And it didn't mean it made it worse, but it was no different if I sat at the kitchen table with my foot down, I drove a car with my foot down, or I went for a 2 mile hike. I would still get the same swelling, same discoloration, but it would come back with icing and elevation.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it was a long process, and it wasn't until probably August or September of 24, so June, July, August, 3.5, 4 months after the Achilles rupture where I felt like I could kind of go do things, like really ride my
Yeah.
bike on a trail.
Yeah.
So,
So, what did you think was the hardest part of your recovery? Was it the physical part or the mental part?
yeah, I think I think for me it was probably the mental part, but I think the mental part was, exacerbated by the physical part. Like
Yes.
mentally for me, I need to move
Yes.
and get my heart rate up to feel comfortable and, good about things. And so I think the mental was really driven by the lack of physical ability,
Yes.
you know?
That's all
Um,
so familiar.
yes, yes,
I'm so glad to be out of that phase because now that I can actually get my heart rate up, I feel a lot more sane.
yes,
Um,
exactly,
and
exactly.
so, what was your next race after your injury? Did you have a goal race or was it nationals? Or how did you decide you were ready to
Yeah.
step it up again?
Well, and to be fair, that was a year ago. So now we're into the next year for nationals. So I didn't have a nationals goal for 2024. That wasn't really realistic. But earlier, even before my hip surgery, I had had my eye on a race in Kentucky called the FIG, which has been around a really
Yeah.
long time. And I have only, at that time, had only traveled for one race outside of Wisconsin in 15 years of adventure racing.
Wow.
I
Well,
went
they've
to,
got some great race organizations up there. So I guess you
yeah,
didn't need to.
I didn't need to. I did that, wild adventure race in Minnesota as my first one. And then I was in Wisconsin for like 12 or 13 years, and even nationals when it came, it was all right at home. So I had an eye on the FIG because I hadn't been able to race all year. And I had some friends the team name All Out of Bubblegum, who expressed interest in going as well. I had not raced with them before. And I told them, I should be recovered from the hip. We should be able to race. And so we hadn't registered yet, but we had our eyes on it. Then when the Achilles blew out, it was like, okay, now this is really iffy on the radar screen. So they were willing to wait on registration for a little bit and decide later. And so as my progression was going, I was in communication with them all the time as far as how things are
Yeah.
coming along, how I feel. And I just made it clear up front I wasn't going to be running. Like that was one thing I
Yeah.
knew wasn't going to be available. Um, but by August or early September, I think I really felt like, you know what? I won't be 100%, but I can hike, track, bike, whatever. I think we'll be okay. And so in September, we registered and committed to it. And so I raced November 2nd. So I think that was 6 months out from the Achilles injury.
Yeah.
And it was It was difficult. It didn't feel any worse during the race than it would any other day, doing things basically. But like hiking, I wasn't going straight up the hills. It was kind of sidestepping because I couldn't flex
Yeah.
the ankle well enough. So I was kind of sidestepping and whatever. But I think I knew I was ready when I was done with that race. Like I knew I was kind of
You
back.
didn't feel ready when the race started?
I mean, I felt like I could go do something for 12 hours, but I didn't know that I would be able to really push it, you know.
Yeah.
And afterwards I felt like I could probably push it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So how am I going to determine if I'm ready?
Yeah.
Was it a
Uh,
length of time that you had been working out so you knew like, oh, my body can handle this amount of time, so a little bit more will be fine? Or was it some feelings, some skills in your body that you felt like were back to normal? How'd you know?
I don't think I'm a good one to answer this question, even though it is my situation. Because as I pointed out earlier, I used to race my 24-hour adventure races on just work training, like walking around in the
Yeah.
woods, because I didn't have time to train. And I just accepted the fact that after the race, I was going to be miserable,
Yeah.
Um, but I had been biking a lot, like I said, going into the year. I was biking a lot when I was done, and I knew my fitness was such that I could hike and whatever. I knew I couldn't run. I didn't have the running fitness, but I've been almost all the teams I've been with I've had my kids with me in different races and so on. We've always been mid-pack, and it's been like good decisions and decent navigation gets you mid-pack.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like hanging near the end. I knew that if I could move along at a reasonable pace. I think for me, it was when I got done with a race or when I got done with a training event, how did my leg feel?
Yeah.
If I put it up and I iced it and I rested it, did it get better the next day or the day after that?
Right.
And that's when I kind of knew I was ready. But all of my doctors that I've had for these different things, I made it clear up front what I do.
Yep.
And I think it's really interesting too, because I made it clear that I do stuff that is long duration, extended events, Um, and they use the term elite athlete, which I think is really funny. They don't use it about me, to be clear. But like when I had the Achilles rupture, they said, well, we have two ways to treat this. We can just let it heal on its own, or for elite athletes, we can stitch it back together and try to, increase the speed of recovery and strength of it and so on. Um, and I said, well, I wouldn't consider myself an elite athlete. And he said, well, no, I guess to be clear, we mean somebody that is active 4 or 5 days a week kind of thing. I said, oh, if that's the case, put me in the elite athlete category,
Yeah, I was gonna say, do not sell yourself short. Just the fact that you've done one adventure race for, 12
Right,
hours kind of puts you in an elite status compared to probably most of the people, those
right,
doctors are treating.
right,
So,
exactly. So I
yeah,
guess that's the thing is as long as your doctor knows what you want to do, they're going to say yes or no. I was looking at my notes and the doctor I had for the Achilles made a note that I probably wouldn't be able to run until the following spring. Which is fine. I went and did the fig with all out of bubble gum and we hiked and did fine. And so I kind of took his word for it. Did I run before that? Yeah, but I also knew that he told me I wasn't going to injure it. It was just going to be uncomfortable and, you know,
yeah,
so I think it's you and, doing it gradually, taking your time, I think is the big thing. I
yeah.
understand the anxious nature of it. I
Yeah,
do.
I'm not a patient person.
I-
I've
Yes.
been given many, many chances to learn this lesson in my life, and
Yes.
this one didn't teach it to me either.
Yeah.
But so then we're gonna fast forward to nationals.
Yeah.
That was then almost a year after the fig, because the fig was in November.
Yeah, right. Yep.
All
So it was
right.
another 10 months. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So tell me about nationals and your experience, and um, then I want to know like if you still feel your injury, like do you still feel like you've adjusted how you handle yourself or how you approach racing. But
Right.
tell me about your nationals experience.
Well, Nationals, it was only my second one. It was great to race with 180 Adventure. Paul and Julie are just they're animals out there. I experienced it early in the year at the Rib Mountain race. Um, you know, I can hold my own out there pretty well, but it was a struggle. I went into nationals with the goal of, us all being healthy, sticking together, and having a, solid mid-pack race. Don't make big navigation errors, whatever. And we didn't. But I think when I got to the start line, I wasn't thinking at all about my health and my previous injuries. I was comfortable with that. But my goal did change a little bit at the beginning of the nationals, and it was like, let's survive. Because looking at 2 days of 93 or whatever, 94 degrees, I was
Yes.
like, I come from northern Wisconsin, and it's, generally pretty decent up here. I'm like, hydration is going to be a big deal. And I
Yeah.
started out that big trek with 100 ounces of water in my pack because I knew it was going to be 5+ hours of trekking.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Did it
it was
last?
tough.
Was that enough water for that first trek?
Yeah, but barely. I
Barely.
think
Yeah.
I think I finished it on the last little gravel hike down to the put in,
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but there were no options out there, I think, as Chip found out the hard
Yeah.
way, if I saw. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what they said.
Yep. So I think, I went into it with the goal of survival at that point, but we started out pretty strong. We were doing well. But it was even within the first few hours, we were kind of getting beat down on that trek. It was just warm, it
Yeah.
was tough. But we have our I'm not as good at judging time and making decisions out there. I move forward pretty well, but one of my teammates is one kind of we call her I don't know, she makes the best judgment out there, I guess. Let's put it that way. She knows when to turn and move on to the next the
That's
next
a hard
leg.
skill.
Yep, and she's very good at it. And well, and Paul and Julie both did. Were in on this one and said we need to just drop this track and start moving because we got the cutoff. So we got to that cutoff and we paddled our tails off and got there within a minute of the cutoff. I mean, it
Wow.
was it was tighter than tight.
That is so
Um,
stressful that early in
uh,
the race, too.
and just could not feel like we could paddle any harder, but we got there. Um, and then moved into the next paddle and moved forward. And I think about mid-race, I felt a lot more knocked down than usual just because of the heat that we had gone through and the stretch of pushing.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, no real complaints, no huge errors, but 10 different places along the way where you could have shaved 5 or 10 minutes and maybe picked up one or two more. It's one of
Always.
those things. But
Yeah.
they're fantastic ladies to race with, and we had a good race, and yeah, I was pleased with it. Yeah.
That's great. What would you say was the high from the race for you?
Um, Probably portaging the Woka Whitewater Park was probably my
That
favorite
was the
part.
high?
Yeah, because it was better than, draining the canoe again and emptying the pack of water and whatever else. Because knowing there wasn't anybody that got through there unscathed, I was like, I'd rather just carry the canoe and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for you. Good
Mhm.
decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you said you didn't think much about your injury. So it wasn't on your mind and you don't anymore like handle yourself differently or favor any part of your body or not?
Yeah, that's right. I do notice it if I make direct contact with it. If you ride flats or whatever, and you've got off your bike and your bike is ridden into you, and you've got the pedal in the back of the heel or whatever, that it's even lightly, it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
That particular Achilles is super sensitive to that. So if I have a direct hit on it, it hurts. But as far as re-injury, I don't have that concern anymore for the most part. Um,
Awesome.
and I think I reached that point on the 1 year anniversary of my Achilles surgery. There's a race called the Red Bull 400, and it's a 400-meter uphill race. And
Hmm.
my daughter and I did that this year in 25 in Ironwood, Michigan, and it goes up a ski flying landing hill and then up a ski jump. So
Oh,
it's only a 400-meter race, but it's a 37-degree incline, so a
wow.
75% incline.
Yeah.
And I knew going into that on the 1 year anniversary of my surgery that that was the ultimate test of stretching your Achilles because it's so steep
Yes.
that it put a major, and I, standing at the line for that race start, I was very nervous and I had planned to go up gently and feel it out. And once the gun went off, I forgot about it and I got in race mode and I just went.
Of
And when
course,
I got done, I was like, oh my gosh, it's okay.
it's
So
okay. And
it's
you got to
okay.
share that with your daughter too.
Oh, it was great. It was great.
That's so cool.
She would say that it wasn't great because it's very, very painful. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it
But it's a
was,
great accomplishment. I mean, to share doing something hard, with your
yes.
kids is that's pretty special.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you kind of alluded to like injury and recovery being just a process of aging and being an athlete and all of that. But I'm wondering, is there anything that you learned about yourself or anything like that through your comeback?
Yeah. Um, a few things. Number one is I think staying active full time, whether it doesn't have to be heart rate up all the time, whatever, but it's just moving up and down the stairs, parking far away from the store, whatever else, just getting that foot traffic in. Um, I got a new job promotion several years ago and was off behind a computer for 3 years, and could hardly find the time to move. And just this year, I took a little bit of a downgrade and went back to a partial field position because you know how you mentioned earlier the mental physical connection or whatever. I was mentally going nuts.
Yeah.
And so that I think day-to-day lifestyle moving is important. The other thing I know directly from last year's recovery is that don't get hung up on the day-to-day. You have bad days, you have days where it's swollen, days where it hurts, whatever. Make sure you look out weeks, wait a week before you make a decision as to whether what direction you're going,
Hmm.
because I I pushed it a lot too. I'm a very independent person and wanted to make my own dinner and carry my own plates and whatever. And it's really hard to do with crutches and canes and whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but just give yourself the time and the grace to not pass judgment until a week's gone by instead of a day or two that are
Yeah.
bad. And I think the other thing is focus on the what you cans and not what you can't,
Yeah, I
because
love that.
there's so many things that I couldn't do, but there were so many things I could do, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, that is again inspiring to me, especially right now. I'm coming along. I actually rode the trail that I broke my ankle on today. It's the first time back to that same trail. And I
okay,
actually stopped at the tree that I hit with my handlebar. I thought, how did I do that? Like it was the dumbest thing I could have done. Like it's not even that close to the trail. I must have just really anyway, so
yeah,
I'm getting back there and I still hope to race in February in New Zealand. And I think my biggest concern is that it'll be like more than 24 hours because there's so much that happens restoratively when you sleep. So I'll have a bad day or whatever, and my ankle will be swollen and I'll ice it, and then I'll go to bed, and the next day it's like no problem. So that's
right,
that's the lingering thing I'm a little worried about is not having that time to just restore. But again, I got months to go, and talking with you and hearing how, it wasn't even on your mind much for this nationals race.
yeah.
I just really appreciate hearing that. So, one last thing, what's next for you? Do you have some races, any type of races on the calendar?
Right. I got that question from you and I was thinking I don't. I had planned nationals this year and really didn't put anything on the calendar after nationals because I wasn't sure how I was going to feel after 30 and going hard and wanted to see where I was at. But when I came back healthy and didn't have to go to PT for anything, I actually did a race 2 weeks ago in Iowa, the Wild Driftless.
Oh, cool.
First time ever. It was a great race, and I did that with another team and had a super good time. But I don't have anything on the calendar right now, which is a little different for me because that's motivating, how
Yeah.
we tend to train for a race. Um, I'm looking forward to playing some hockey this winter. I usually do the Rib Mountain race and the two 180 adventure races, so that's three for me. But I would really like to stretch into that expedition.
Well, the Endless
Have you
Mountains is coming up.
saw that? Saw that?
Yeah, and
Yep.
nationals in Oregon next year.
Saw that?
Be a
Yep.
good big
Yep.
one.
I
All
look
right.
at all these, one of your earlier questions, just as part of your wrap up here, is you asked like what got me through, what kept me busy while I was recovering. There was an awful lot of dot watching of
Ah,
races. That was motivating to me to just watch what was going on out there. Yeah.
good.
So
I think I skipped that question. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, for some people it might be like super depressing, but for me it was like, this is what I'm trying to get back to. So I
Yes.
watched a lot of it.
Yeah, that's been a mixed bag for me, because I've been volunteering. So I've been at nationals, I've been at worlds. It
Hmm.
was a lot of fun. I felt valued.
Yes.
But yeah, I just wanted to be racing so bad that there were some moments where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should be here because of that. But in
Right.
hindsight, I'm glad I did. But
Yeah.
yeah, the dot watching though, that always gives me the motivation to be like, oh, I kind of want to do a race like that, and I wonder if I
Hmm.
could. So I better go train today in case I get to. So
Right. Yep. Yep.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joel. I appreciate you sharing your story and talking with me today. And
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see you at another race coming up soon.
I hope so. It was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we're here with Alyssa Godesky. She is way more well known than me. She has a long sports history and has been on many podcasts, including her own. But Alyssa, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and a brief history about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I would say that in the adventure racing space at least, you are pretty darn well known too and all the things that Disability and your squad does for the sport. So yeah, don't sell yourself short. I think I'm still finding my footing there. So but thank you for that introduction. And yeah, I'm Alyssa Godesky. I have been an endurance sport athlete since 2005 when I ran my first 50-mile race. And that endurance sport journey kind of went all over the place since then in the last 20 years. But basically, I started in the trail running and ultra running world. And then after college, found my footing in triathlon and particularly Ironman. And at that point, I saw pretty quickly that that space was moving fast, changing a lot, really kind of had an avenue for someone to pursue sport professionally. And so I switched gears a little bit from the trail and ultra running world into Ironman and Ironman training around 2010. And spent a few years really pursuing that a pro career, which took me, I think it was 2014. I left my corporate job in Baltimore City, moved back down to Charlottesville, Virginia, where I had graduated from the University of Virginia, and kind of jumped all into, sport full time. And so at that time, I was pursuing triathlon full time, mostly Ironman. So I would race half Ironman and stuff mostly for fun or for training, but most really just competitive at that Ironman long grind day distance. And so I had a blast. It was, probably until COVID, several good years of traveling all around the world, racing, training, that sort of thing. And really, just kind of secured the concept that endurance sports was, something that just I thrived on both mentally and physically. And so I knew that was going to be a part of life for, decades to come, basically. So even after professional sport was going to wind down, which unfortunately, COVID hit. And that did kind of put a damper on racing for all of us. Ironman triathlon was not happening at that time. And I had started kind of getting back into the ultra running world, the trail running world, running some FKTs and fastest known times and things like that. But I think no one really knew what life was going to be like in that just 5 years ago in that time. But um, had it been my way, I think I would have come out of that and continued to race Ironman just a little bit as I continued also turning away from that into more trails and mountain stuff again. But unfortunately, the decision was kind of made for me when I got this knee injury in 2020. Gosh, my dates are going to be all confused, but 2023, I believe.
Well,
And
it seems
so,
like to me somewhere in there is when I realized like who you were. Like I'd heard your name, and it was, you're known in adventure racing for a much different reason than I'm known, because you came from such a athletic background and from a triathlete coming into the sport. I remember racing a longest day, and you were going to be racing that race, and everyone was saying, "Oh, these are going to be, the next greatest racers."
oh wow,
And
that's
I don't remember
very
how well you
flattering.
did.
Yeah.
I know you did better than our team, but it's been fun to like see like, oh, there's these new people like coming into this sport and expected to crush it. And so I'm excited to talk with you because sport's been such a big part of your life,
Mhm.
and then having an injury that took you away from that for a time. Um, yeah, I'm just so interested to hear about that. But tell me first, then, when did you start adventure racing?
Yeah, so it was really in that COVID era. My husband Matt and I, we bought mountain bikes. It was that like frantic, what bikes are left? What can we
Yeah.
find type of purchase? And we had begun dabbling a little bit in orienteering because I had found myself entering the Barkley marathons actually. And
Wow.
so I needed to learn to navigate for that basically. So we lived in Virginia at the time and we're doing some Quantico orienteering meets and things like that. And I actually also jumped into, I guess what might have been 2019, the Stockville, one of the Rootstock racing events. And so, I had kind of dipped my toe into a little bit of that scene and, really made some really good friends. That year at the Stockville, I think was like a pivotal life moment for me because the group of friends, Brian Gatens, who does the Dark Zone podcast, it's like that group that I found in that race was adventure racers, and they were like, "You got to try the sport." And it had always been something that I had seen. Like Virginia's a big scene for adventure racing, so I
Yeah.
always saw those races, but was like, I was on the other side. It was like paddling, like, oh, like these barriers to entry, right? Just did seem quite large. And so it wasn't until I made some friends and they were lending us gear and all of that, that we
That's
really
interesting to me that you
decided to
thought
do
there
it.
was a barrier, because to me it would have been an easier sport to come over to adventure racing from what you'd already accomplished.
Yeah, I think that, adventure racing in the media can be sensationalized, right? Like you look at the photos and you see the scary whitewater, right? You see the boats tipping over, and it's like, I can't do that. I
Yeah,
don't have those
that's
skills. Like that
true.
would take so long. And so I think it just seemed out of reach for, a little bit of those reasons. And, so we just really hadn't tried until we had a lot of time on our hands with COVID. And so, and Rootstock Racing actually had a Two Rivers rendition in 2021. And so Matt and I raced that. And actually, you beat us there. So again, don't sell yourself short.
I don't remember that.
And
I remember
so
having to carry pack rafts in that race
oh
and
yeah,
everything.
we learned a lot. Those 36
Yeah.
hours, which I think we probably actually only decided to race like 30 of them because we were so in over our heads. But we had fun, and honestly, again, it was that community that
Yeah.
kept us kind of coming back and encouraging us. Like, you guys can get this. You have, and people keep telling us, like, you have the athletic side, you have the physical abilities.
Yeah.
There's a learning curve. Like, stick with it, be patient, and like, yeah, I think that's because I am a competitive person, right? I want to
You
do these
must
things
be.
to compete, and so I think had I not found some really good mentors and just friends in the community who encouraged me to stick with it and like just said, it's going to take a little bit of time, but like you will find yourself competing at some point. That's what's really helped me stick with it.
Yeah. And I want to come back around to, your injury and the recovery process. But then fast forward to nationals, which is where I saw you last, and you were
Mhm.
racing on an all-female team. And tell me how that team got together and how that happened.
Yeah, so I was racing this year with Kit Vreeland and Ash Eaton on Team Pretty Reckless. And so when I was recovering from my knee injury, they had reached out to me actually. So it was like not nationals this year, but last year, right? And asked, and that at that point I was in between these two surgeries, and I kind of thought I might be coming back. We didn't realize that the first one hadn't really worked yet. So they had asked if I wanted to race with them that year, and I knew something wasn't right, so I had said no, but I was like, oh, I was kind of excited about that idea of racing with an all women's team and just trying that dynamic. And but I had to say no with my knee, and then they reached out again this year, and I was kind of in a similar spot. Like I knew this time my knee was going to be getting better, but it just felt like it's been so long. I didn't want to commit to anything. I didn't want to let anyone down. Like the pressure alone that I felt like I had to get back was a lot, and I didn't want two teammates counting on me to, have to be
Yeah.
ready for racing in September. And so I had actually said no initially, and then I think it was a while, maybe a couple months later, and in that time, I actually had started coaching Ash. And, I was talking to her and Kit, and they said, are you sure about nationals? And I was like, they caught me at like a good time. I was like, give me a day. And so, it had been a couple months. Like I got to see the progression of my fitness a little bit more and kind of where I was. And I felt a little bit better. And to say, I'm still not going to be what I would consider 100% for being able to race, but I do, I think we could pull this off, and I think I'll be ready to race hard. If
Yeah.
if they still wanted me, and so we were all really excited. It was, we're all Vermonters and friends, so it was really fun to kind of secure that and
Yeah.
decide to give it a go.
Okay, so then let's go back in time. When was your injury, and was this the first race back, or have you raced since your injury?
I did race a little bit this summer. Well, actually a lot of it if you count Endless Mountains is a lot. That's a lot.
That's what I was thinking. I
Yeah,
thought
and
you did that race.
so
That's a lot.
um I raced Tug Hill 24-hour just to make sure I would be able to survive for Endless Mountains, the 7-day expedition race. And then nationals. So I hadn't been racing a ton, but Endless Mountains was
Yeah.
obviously big, and honestly, the difference in my physical abilities and my knee and everything from June to September has been huge. And I would say, at nationals, I really felt more like myself as an athlete
Yeah.
than prior. So it's definitely still kind of coming around.
Okay, so now let's hear the details. What was your injury? What happened? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so it's like not even a good story, but it was, so this is May of 2023. As I'm talking through the timeline, if I'm wrong, I'll figure it out at some point. But May of 2023, I was getting ready for the One Water race, which is like a big swim run in Sweden.
A
So
huge swim run.
yeah, I was headed there for the first year. I was really excited. End of May, doing a treadmill workout that I have literally done, Andrea, 100 times in my career. And I felt something twinge in my knee at one point. And I was like, ooh, that really didn't feel good. But then it kind of went away. So I was like, let me try one more. And I just started running, heard a pop, and immediately I was like, could not put weight on my knee, and like nothing was
Wow.
good. So um, I got in. Luckily, I have a good friend here who happens to be an orthopedic surgeon at Dartmouth. So he was able to see me really quickly. He was able to help me kind of get a fast track on an MRI type of thing. And so within a week, we had, he basically said, there's really only one injury that would be like quite bad. And I got the MRI report, and he was just like silent. And I was like, this is the one, right? And he's
Oh,
like, yep. So
wow.
I tore the medial, so the inside root of my meniscus. And so
Wow.
a lot of times you hear meniscus tears. I mean, meniscus is that kind of padding in between your femur and your tibia in your knee. It's super important as it like degrades and wears as we age. Many people have knee problems, and it's very common as athletes to have tears and things like that in that. I actually had torn that meniscus in high school as well. Um, but when you tear the root of it, you're actually pulling that padding like off the bone. And so it basically
Wow.
just isn't secured anymore and it starts pushing out of the joint. And then you literally have no padding in between your bones. So aside from just it being painful and all of that, um, you're just damaging the cartilage of your bones like every step that you're taking essentially after that because there's no more protection anymore. So it's kind of like this fast track to a bunch of other problems in addition to that one. Um,
But it
but
sounds like you didn't do anything to cause it. Like, why did that happen?
You know, I was very lucky throughout the 20 years prior. I mean, I had one stress fracture at one point in all of that time. I had a couple little things, I'd take off a week from running here and there, maybe, but I was really lucky that I never had injury. And then this was just a big one, and it really was nothing I could have done. I had felt a little bit of pain, mostly like while I was sleeping, honestly, in the month leading up. And my doctor said, like, if you had come to me saying that, like, we wouldn't have caught this, But what we come to find out is that the alignment of my leg, I was a little bit knock-kneed. And
Hmm.
so because of that, all of the miles I've been putting on my feet, and because I was mostly a heel striker running too, which didn't help the problem. But I was just really putting tons of pressure onto that inside of the medial meniscus and
Hmm.
the inside of my knee joint. And so, one of the doctors essentially described it as a ticking time bomb because it was just a matter of time as things wore down and just given that my mechanics and all of that. Um, and so at that point, I made the decision, which good or bad, I scheduled the surgery for it for after the one water race because I basically, said if I can get through one water, taking some ibuprofen and just managing swelling and stuff, I'm going to. And I knew, I agreed to all the risks and everything with the doctors, and they understood how important that was to me at that point to get to experience and things like that. So I did continue to run. I say run in quotes because I really could barely run. I was like shuffling at best when I was running, but I did a
Yeah.
lot of hiking, just as much time on feet as I could kind of manage within that. Did the one water race and then had surgery about 2 weeks after that. And they did a standard repair on that. Everything seemed to go really well. I had PRP injection during the surgery. The recovery from this injury is not fun. It's 6 weeks of non-weight bearing on your
Yeah.
on your leg. So your
I
leg
feel
is
ya.
locked straight. Yeah, your leg is locked straight in a brace, and you cannot put any weight on it. And so you learn again, as someone who never had an injury, to going to that for some time was really, really tricky.
Yeah, this was in 2023.
Yes. Yeah. So that was like September of 2023. And I did did the recovery period, did the PT. December and January came around, and I was just like, I think it should be feeling better by now. I know it's a long process. I know I need to be patient, but like it's really just not adhering to any sort of timeline, even closely, right? Like they all said
Yeah.
it's on your
Oh,
own timeline and all of that, but I was just like, something really doesn't feel right. So in February, we did another MRI and saw that it had come out. I think two-thirds of the repair had pulled back out. And so that was not great.
I mean,
That was really bad news for me.
how did you manage all of this? That just sounds so challenging, especially like I said before, knowing that sport is such a big part of your life and then not being able to do it. How did you manage?
Honestly, I think I was in like a state of emergency mentally, and I was just doing the logistics because at that point, not only could I not do sport, I couldn't even walk my dogs. Like, I could
Yeah.
not walk a half a mile without really limping, my leg really swelling up. Like, it was just bad. And
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't even, I mean, at that point, I didn't care about running. I was like, I just need to get I just need to walk
Yeah.
again, you know? And so I think I just was very compartmentalized in things in terms of, I'm very plan oriented and very much like, okay, this is wrong. So like, what steps are we going to take? Right. And
Yeah.
so I was just in that mode of like researching the injury, researching doctors, getting to appointments, doing all of that, figuring out the options and not letting myself, for better or worse, right? Like think too much outside of that until I had a good plan forward.
Yeah. So
Um,
then you had another surgery to
mhm.
repair again.
Yeah, so at that point they figured out that it was because of, going into the first surgery, we hadn't investigated kind of that alignment issue of my knee. And so when I went to some other doctors, I traveled to Boston and saw them, and they basically said, if we keep repairing this, this is going to keep tearing out because of the alignment of your knee.
Ah.
And so to fix that, they had to they would have to straighten my leg, basically. And
Wow.
so it's called a high tibial osteotomy, where they basically cut into the top of your tibia and open it up and to straighten it, basically, and then to straighten like your gait, and then they put a wedge in to hold that, and then your bone kind
Wow.
of grows into that. So they would need to do a re-repair plus the osteotomy to hopefully have the repair hold. And then I was doing a lot of research again, and I found that there was a paper that had come out after my first surgery about this other procedure called centralization, where the doctor was experimenting with um, not only doing a standard repair, but then basically taking your meniscus and like anchoring it into place so that it like really stays put.
Yeah.
And so I got into this mental space of like, my two options the doctors were giving me were the high tibial osteotomy plus a re-repair or a partial knee replacement. And so when I talked to doctors about a partial knee replacement, they were all like, you got to go to someone who's doing it all the time. Like, you really need someone who's skilled. And then when I would talk to doctors in Boston who do knee replacements, they would say, you're too young, you're only 39. We don't want to do it until you've exhausted all your options. So I had those two options, but really I felt like I had the one option to try next. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that if I can get this doctor who's doing the centralization procedure to also do it. So I called this, I called Dr. Smith in Missouri, which by the grace of God, I had been paying for this insurance that was like a nationwide network, right? And so he was actually in network in Missouri.
Wow.
And I called his office, left a message while I was crying, saying my story and basically asking if he would see me. And I'll never forget, he called me back that night and he said, Alyssa, this is Dr. Smith. You've got a big problem. And I was like, oh my God. But he went through the whole thing with me and he said, I'll like help you do this, but I just have to tell you, I'm doing this to get you back to normal life, not to elite sport. He basically was
Wow.
like, I do not know what will happen beyond that point of
Wow.
you getting back to being able to like walk again normally. And so he felt good about that. But yeah, he said, I was like, will I run again? He said, we'll talk about that a year after surgery. Like you know, he really made no promises. Of course, in my head, I'm like, well, if I can walk, I can run. So he's basically telling me I can run again. But no, that was not what he was saying.
Well, you have like the best outlook. I can't imagine how much that would take out of you just doing all of the legwork, figuring out what's needed and having multiple opinions and getting the right doctors on board and making decisions that, may or may not be the solution. That must have been really challenging.
Yeah, and I think it didn't hit me until, again, like it all started happening really fast. He agreed to see me. We scheduled the surgery for April of 2024. But and then Matt and I had to stay in Missouri for a week. So it was just a lot of things to happen to get that in order. And then again, coming out of the surgery, it's just, traveling back from Missouri while I'm not able to be weight bearing and that whole thing. Plus the osteotomy side, the surgery was much bigger this time around. Usually they would actually do those in two separate procedures. But since
Mhm.
I was traveling, he's like, I'll do it in one.
Yeah.
And so I think it wasn't really until May where I started to, get over that hump of the initial just like ugh of the first surgery or the second surgery. And then I was like, oh man, I have to go through all of this again and I have no idea what's about to happen. And so Matt was actually racing Expedition Africa. And so he was gone and he came back and I just I remember picking him up and like bursting into tears and I was just like, I don't think I'm okay, And so
Yeah.
yeah, because it was a lot. Like I was really sad because I didn't know what was going to happen. I was super anxious. And so, Matt's great and we worked together. We got me in to see my primary care doctor so I could work with her. I started seeing a sports psychologist and really just, doing the work, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's still like, it was really hard, but it was really nice to expand my network to professionals that were like kind of keeping an eye on me, and
Yeah,
making sure
I
that things
imagine,
were okay.
because we're in the same boat. My partner races. So Chip is out there racing while I'm like, oh, I wish I could be. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to be okay, but he's also my main support system. So
Yeah.
it's been challenging. I mean, uh, a few less unknowns in my situation. I just broke my ankle, which I keep trying to remind
Oh,
myself it's just a broken leg, or it's just a
yeah.
broken bone. It's going to be fine. But yeah, I just can't imagine what you've gone through. And that's really great that you got the help that you needed, not just physically, but mentally too, because it's just such a huge change going from being active a lot to being
Mhm.
almost completely sedentary.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that, it certainly still wasn't an overnight, like, oh, now I'm fine again type of thing. But I think it makes you feel better day to day, knowing you have a plan, right? You have
Yeah.
people who are there to help you. You're like working on it, right? Where as you just don't want to feel like you're like flailing aimlessly,
Yeah.
um, and I had done a pretty good job, I think, of doing all the things they tell you of like, find things outside of sport and keep yourself busy. And I did like a lot of that, but it's still really hard,
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard like to always cry and complain to your partner, right? It's nice to have another party
Yeah.
there for that stuff sometimes because you want to keep your friendships with people like of course make sure they know you're going through hard times and things like that, but like I think having some more space where Matt didn't have to carry that whole burden himself either was really important,
Yeah.
and it like lightened things like around the house for us too.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I think
sure.
that was just really helpful. And again, it still wasn't an overnight change, but it was really important that I did that. And I would absolutely
Yeah.
recommend that sort of thing to anyone who, is going through something similar.
Yeah. So then you had both surgeries and you're back to recovery. Uh, how did you stay motivated and when did you start feeling like, okay, this is going to be fine and I'm going to be able to do the things I want to do? How did that
Uh,
go?
yesterday? No.
Yeah, work in
uh,
progress.
yeah. So I had that second surgery April of 2024, and I had a real. So I changed PTs with that second because second surgery I had asked around town more and gotten some more referrals and talked to other people. So I changed to a different team of PTs, and I just made appointments with them weekly, if not twice weekly in the beginning. And I just made sure that like I was checking all the boxes and doing everything I could. And honestly, I was doing that. And as much as I was doing that, it still really was just time. Like time needed to happen, right? Like the
Yes.
body needed to heal. And there was so much going on in my knee that no matter what I did or like what type of apparatus I tried, right? Like it really wasn't going to speed up time. And
Yeah.
so making sure I was doing the very simple things with my flexion and my extension and all of those little exercises was really important, but just trying to let time, there really was nothing I
Yes.
could do, but
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and
when did you feel a turning point? Like when did you feel like, okay, I'm going to be ready to do, it was the Tug Hill, right, that you did first?
yeah, It was so in January, February time last year, I was riding quite a bit. So I was able to ride my bike a lot on the trainer and was able to put in some good efforts and start feeling just that fitness kind of come back. Um, and then, but it wasn't until May. So I started in March or April-ish to do some walk running, and it was tough. I mean, if you will go back in my training log and look, it's like my comments are like, I don't think I'll ever run fast again. Like it doesn't feel good. This isn't great. I mean, not good, not good, not good. It wasn't until actually a run I had in May in St. George, Utah. I was there coaching a race and I had a phone call scheduled. And so I wanted to do the 6 mile loop. And I was like, oh man, on trails, I got to like push myself to get through in time. Right. And so I just was like, oh, I'll try running up this trail. And for the first time, like I was able to just run. Right. And it's like, I think change of venue helped, like soft surface, all of those things, and nice, just kind of smooth trail. And that was the first run. It was like May 8th or something of this year where I was like, I ran 6 miles and I was like, I didn't need to take walk breaks for my knee, none of that. And that was really when I turned a corner in terms of like, okay, I think this is going to work.
Yeah.
Adventure racing was still so scary to me because of all the off trail stuff.
Yes.
And so, the flexion of my knee, like I still don't have full flexion and I don't know if I'll ever really get it. It's still getting better kind of, but in that time period, stepping over logs, stepping over trees, kind of doing that stuff was like really hard. I had to just
Yeah.
kind of swing my leg around and things like that. And so I was like, fitness wise, I know I can kind of power through, but it was just really, I knew I would be the slowest one bushwhacking, and I knew it was gonna be mentally just like a struggle. And then at
Yeah.
Tug Hill, it was like really wet and there were beaver dams everywhere. And so my leg kept getting stuck in the like
Oh.
mud. And so, it
Oh.
was like all of those kinds of things adding up. But, I made it through and it didn't like set my knee back at all. And
Yeah.
so
How long was that race?
that was a 24-hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I knew at that point, I felt really lucky that I was adventure racing because as much as it's like, a 24-hour race is a big race, you have a team out there with you.
Yeah.
The pace can kind of be a little bit slow, right? It's not like I was trying to run a road 10K as fast as like I could or something like
Yeah.
that. And so
Exactly.
there was, and you're biking and you're paddling, right? So you're not all on your feet. And so it it really had been a good kind of entry for me back into racing without feeling a ton of pressure to be like at my best or like the
Yeah.
fastest and set a PR because like you can't really set PRs in adventure racing, right? Like you don't know what they are. And
Yeah.
so it was really nice to have the sport to like to focus on through the
Yeah.
summer as I was conditioning and like trying to get back just to normalcy, really.
And were you racing with Matt for that race?
Yes. So I raced with
Yeah.
Matt and with Scott Cox. And then the three of us plus Kit Vreeland raced the Endless Mountains expedition race together that
Yeah,
next.
and how much after that was after when was Endless Mountains in the whole scheme of things?
Endless Mountains was probably a month after Tug Hill, so like middle to end of June.
And that was a tall order, 7 days, right?
Yes, that was 7 days. And luckily, I want to say we knew in like January the schematic, like the kind of overview of what the
Mm-hmm.
distances were for each thing. And I knew it was going to be a lot of biking. And so that was like a big focus for myself of like, if I can get myself in a position where I'm biking well, like that's really going to help me. And then I
Yeah.
have teammates for the trekking, like I don't have to be the fastest. And again, I was pretty confident we weren't going to be doing a 50-mile road run or anything like that.
Yeah.
That would really be an issue. But I definitely had to manage that with like anti-inflammatories and just kind of, but honestly, I think anyone might be taking
Yeah,
anti-inflammatory in a
everyone.
7-day expedition race, right? Like,
Yeah, I
so,
think,
keeping that perspective is important too.
my first race back hopefully will be the Magnificent in New Zealand in
Okay.
February.
Yeah. So
So
you're
it's
like
a
similar. You're
multi-day
like, let's
race.
just jump right in.
Well, we'll see if that's smart or not. But
Yeah.
the only thing I'm a little bit worried about is that overnight sleep is so restorative that, I'll
Mhm.
have some swelling before I go to bed and I wake up and it's all back to normal. But in a race like that, where we're not probably going to be getting a full chunk of sleep that often, a little worried about that. You didn't have any issues with that during Endless Mountains?
So I found that even just like a 3 hour sleep was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And I brought like a knee sleeve to do compression and stuff while I slept.
Okay.
But I think if you can lay down for like any amount of time, your body is tricked into being like, we got to fast track this
Yeah.
recovery.
We got
I'm
to take
sure
advantage of
7 or
this.
8 hours would have been a little bit better, but no, I do think your body does in that like 90 minutes to even 3 hours. I think a lot can really be reset. So there's hope. There's a lot of hope.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, how did your mind and body hold up through the nationals? Because then you're now almost, is that what, a year out from your
Yeah, a little bit more. So it was probably like 16 months out from the second surgery. And honestly, my knee was not on my mind too much at all. I mean,
I
Kit
love
Ash
to
and I
hear
wanted
that.
to race hard, and so I was definitely in like competitor mode for that race, and I
Yeah,
wasn't, at both Tug Hill and Endless Mountains, I was like not in competitor mode. I was in like guard my knee, let's make it through this in one piece mode, and
yeah,
I really didn't think about it, which is a huge win during that race. And so instead, yeah, I think we were all just actually focused on racing, and that was, yeah.
yeah,
So
that's exciting. I hope to get there one of these races.
yeah, you definitely will.
Yeah, and so great that you were racing on an all-female team
Hmm.
and that you did so well. Didn't you come in, I think, seventh overall?
Yes,
Which is
yes.
fabulous. And two women's
Thank
teams in the
you.
top 10 is like just so impressive. That's really, really great job.
Yeah, adventure
Um,
racing is definitely, coming from triathlon where it was also a male dominated sport. I have to give credit to the women of AR and the work that USARA is doing to, give women a place in the sport. And the work is paying off. It's really great to see.
yeah, will you be racing in an all-female team often?
That's a great question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So right now I'm kind of figuring out like, you know, what my future with sport is going to look like. I do think I have some unfinished business in terms of things that I want to race on my own. And so that will probably be a priority in the short term. Now I'm 40, so not that I won't be doing, you know, good things for many years to come, but I am aware of the age factor. So there are some things I want to try and, start working on sooner than later. But I really had fun racing with Kit and Ash, and that was actually only the second time I hadn't raced with Matt. And so, but it was really, I found it to be really fun. I think I would definitely love to race in an all women's team. And it is a very competitive division and a very, and just overall competitive. And again, that's why I like to do sport is the competitive side of things. And so you don't have to lose that by racing with all women, which is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you're proving that for us.
Yeah.
That's great. Um, so is there anything else you want to share? What have I missed?
I don't think there's too much else, but I think, lean on, if there's people out there who are injured. I know, you probably have done this too. It's like you look up on and in Instagram, anyone who shared your injury, right? And like you kind of look for these success stories. And I think it's really important not to get caught up too much in that. Like really, form your team of support and like lean on them pretty heavily. But also do make time for that identity piece outside of sport. I mean, like took a gardening class. I like leaned into some town kind of committees and stuff like that. And I think that was all just really helpful to keep reminding me that like sport's a big part of my life, but that's not who I
Not
am,
everything.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think doing that is is a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
But it is important. And I think, yeah, just finding those people who love you and you can trust and lean on them for all the support they can bring because, you know, it will get better, but it's just, like I said, the biggest thing was just passing the time sometimes and letting
Yeah.
that happen.
Yeah. And the only thing else that I feel like I'm not sure I'm gonna know is am I ready or not? Like I know
Yeah.
it sounded like you were pretty sure, but
Yeah, but if you had asked me, I'd be like, no, I'm probably definitely not ready by any like standard, right? But I think and that's the cool thing with endurance sports too. And I mean, you've been in the sport for a long time as well, and you have the muscle memory, you have the miles, right? And if you know, maybe you have your teammates carry a few more of the mandatory gear, some of the weight off your pack and things like that. Um, you know, being ready is just like that. I don't know how you would ever feel ready, basically, you
yeah.
know, like how can you make someone feel ready? It's like more of a state of mind. And so like looking at it from that state of mind of like, okay, like you know, I've done my training, I feel pretty good about this, like, you know, just and that's part of it too, is like maybe deciding ahead of Magnificent, like some benchmarks for yourself, right? So that you can
Yeah.
remind yourself when you're on the start line of like, I hit those benchmarks. Like I am ready as
Yeah.
I'm going to feel, you know?
Yeah, and I've had to remind myself that I've never waited till I was ready for anything in my life,
Yeah. No one's
sports
ready to
related or
race like
not.
a week-long race like that, you know?
Yeah, it's part of the draw, you know, you want to
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any adventure races on your calendar coming up?
Well, kind of. So actually, Matt and I head out to the UK on Wednesday. We are going to race the original mountain marathon, so a Rogaine
Oh,
style event. It's a 2 day event in the Lake District of the UK.
oh, wow.
So that will be super fun.
Will there
You know,
be
we
dot watching? I'm sure there will be.
I think so. I'm
Okay.
assuming so, but yeah. So, you know, we love that kind of 2 day Rogaine format where you camp overnight and
Yeah.
it looks like some proper UK weather with a high of 48 and 50% chance of rain. So
Oh.
I'm sure an adventure.
There's no bad weather, just bad gear
Right.
choices.
Yeah. But the second half of that trip, I'm actually going to stay and do some running on the Pennine Way because I'm running the Spine race this coming January, and so I'm going to scout
Awesome.
the trail a little bit for that. But that's definitely one of those solo kind of competitive adventures I've had hanging over my head. I really want to knock off, and so. You know, it's an adventure race in its own sort of way, but not a traditional adventure race.
Yeah, I'm just so excited that you're going for such big things, and especially after hearing what you've gone through. So that's
My
just,
PTs would not say that.
well,
Yeah.
you got to make your own choices.
Yes. Well, and that's another thing too for people who are going through injury, you know, like definitely PT is so important as silly as it can seem sometimes, I think, to do like toe raises and toe yoga, right? And like picking up marbles with your toes, right? And I'm like, but those things definitely matter one, but then finding PTs who are really going to listen to you and your goals and work within that. I mean, my PTs were very honest that they hadn't worked with an elite athlete before, but I was like, I don't care. You listen to what I say, and you guys are thinking harder than any PT I've ever had before, right?
Yeah,
And like that's all I want. And as long as we have a shared understanding that I'm going to be pushing every boundary I can, basically,
yeah, yeah,
and you guys know that, and I'm not like faulting, you know, them for the fact that I am kind of pushing boundaries and not maybe seeing all the progress they would, you know, want me to have. But I think that was really important was just to have them kind of on my team and really open communication and have everyone really understanding what the goals were that you
yeah,
had.
yeah. Well, I'm rooting for you.
Thank you. I'm rooting for you too. I'm excited to yeah, that you'll be prepping for the Magnificent and that'll be a good kind of focus over the winter and
Yeah, we'll see.
um
Maybe I'll find something shorter just to try out before then. But
yeah. And
yeah,
racing
that
in New
off
Zealand is
trail
very
nav that
magical. So
oh yeah.
that'll take your mind off your ankle a lot being out there.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
I don't know. The carrying extra weight too, I'm a little concerned about. That and the off trail stuff. like you said, that's what I need to work on, and I'll be doing that. So
Yes, I have no doubt.
anyway,
I have no doubt. Yeah.
well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate you sharing all of that, and I feel inspired and motivated. So
Thanks so
thank
much for
you.
having me. Yeah, it was great to chat.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment. To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for Disability Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.